So we'll stay out of the specifics of contracts and negotiation and all those things and just assume that we have a nice clean contract to execute, right? So what we're looking at inside that contract execution is the number of assets. So as an IT organization, we want to understand the people, functional critical points of contact in the organization. We want to understand groups of people and what their specific needs are. So you may have HR in here, you may have finance, you may have sales, operations, the various functional areas of the business. So you've got individuals, members of groups, and I'm treating them as human capital, so they're assets, right? So then we've got desktops, laptops. You may have mobile. There could be an MDM, a mobile device management strategy around that. That's an asset that we might have to manage. So, and then you've got SaaS, right? Software as a service. In many cases, that's cloud-based. And then we've got data center assets. So the various data center assets, servers, firewalls, those types of devices. So we'll say underneath here, we've got offices. So what are the various types of technology that we're going to support inside an office environment? So we've got WAPs, wireless networks. We've got wired networks. Most of the time, we have some telephony component in here. So you've got wired phones or wireless phones or conference room phones. We could have conference room equipment. So, video walls, sound bars, all those types of things. So all those assets can be in play, right? We want to make sure that during this process, what we're getting is an accurate inventory for what we're going to support. And we've got various tools that can help us do that. So we can scan networks and come back with lists of devices that we can identify. A lot of times that helps us fill gaps. We'll go out and scan a network and we'll find, hey, there's 14 multifunction copy machine, BizHub devices that we found on the network that we didn't know anything about. Make sure that we're set up to properly support those when end users have a problem printing or scanning or copying those types of things.
And I'm curious, when you do the discovery, qualification, defining the requirements before you get to the contract, the things you've just illustrated here on the board, what do you think the percentage is in terms of what the IT organization thinks they have in inventory is defined as assets versus what you find after you've completed the audit?
Probably something like 80-20, like they know about 80% of it, and once we're complete, it's 100.
So if you got 20% that you don't know, what's the risk in having assets that you don't?
It's huge because what's going to happen is, once we get to the end of this process, we want to be in what we call a supportable state. And what happens if you have an asset that's unidentified on the network, then you don't know how to support it. So an end user calls in with a problem related to that specific asset or a process or something that lies within the scope of responsibility for that asset, and you have no way to support it. So that's a big risk factor when you're onboarding, because keeping the user's confidence in your help desk's ability to solve their problems, especially at the very beginning of the engagement, is very important. The minute they call in and they're used to talking to Greg at their help desk that could help them with any problem they ever had, because he knew their landscape front and back. He installed that business copy machine when it came in the door, right? But he forgot to tell you about it, or he's not there anymore, right? So that becomes a problem from a service delivery perspective, because the confidence that the end user has in your ability to solve their problems just completely drops.
So it's a satisfaction, it's time, but it's also going to be, because I can imagine if Nitrio's taking a call and the asset's not identified, that call is going to take longer to handle. Follow-ups into the business to really find that. It's a really big piece for customer satisfaction. But what's also the kind of the pull-through effect of using this process as a catch-all? Because I can imagine if you don't know it's an inventory, then it's probably also a network risk for security attacks.
For sure, absolutely. And a lot of times these devices that are outliers that IT is not aware of or maybe not managing, because a lot of times they'll say, oh, well, that's done through a printing company and they supply all the consumables for it and they just drop the thing off and we lease it and it's not our concern. Well, guess what? That box has a web server running on it. And that web server is vulnerable to the same type of vulnerabilities that all web servers are vulnerable to. So if you're not patching that device and you're not changing the default password on it and doing all the things that you need to do to maintain its security, then that's essentially it's a wormhole on your network that's waiting to be exploited. And so you got to make sure that you know about all those things. Same thing when it comes to servers. I mean, a server that was sitting in the top of a closet that nobody knew about, that hadn't been patched in 8 years, but had been sitting there running on the network.
Right.
And so you've got to find that stuff. You got to pick it out of the crevices of the wiring closet or wherever it may be and get it into your list of assets that's supported. I will tell you that that 80-20 rule applies to these contracts as well. Most of the time when we see a contract come in from sales, right, and our sales process has engineering involved, and so there's a lot of it that we're vetting, but we always tell customers, look, the first thing we're going to do is come in and do an audit on the network environment, and we're going to turn up additional items here that aren't represented in the original contract. So it always ends up being a more thorough list once this process is complete.
Is there anything else, by the way, in the assets that you're looking for?
So this is just to be clear here. We've got, offices here. We may have multiple branch offices, right? So you could have that. You could have, meshes. You could have a lot of network elements in here that are all involved. SD-WAN, those types of products. So we'll just say this is a general list and we'll move forward.